Coming at you live.
That's right. We're on. Hey, greetings, everybody. I'm here with Lauren. That's right. And now I'm here myself. That's good. That's always good news. We check to make sure we have audio. And we'll give everybody a few seconds here to come on. I know Lauren was super excited about this. It's like, this is like a big show now. It's like turning into a thing. But oh my God. Yeah, before we get into it, man, all your fans were blowing it up, sharing this and everything else. This might be our biggest. This might be our biggest one yet.
Not making me any more nervous.
We got a local celebrity on here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's cool. So, all right, we got some folks tuning in, joining in. We got about 15 people with us so far, so that's cool.
Hi, everybody. I don't know who's here.
So, yeah, so let's kick it off. So, I'm here with Lauren Altman this evening. Everybody, a lot of you know who she is, local celebrity. And before we get into your whole story, first of all, the Altman family, like you come from a line of a lineage of local celebrities, right? I started thinking about it, and it's like, what's Michael D up to these days? So her brother Michael D Altman was on WCPO, was a reporter for a while, and I haven't seen too much of him lately. And then your dad, who's also a good friend of mine, an attorney, has been very active in the with the Sierra Club and all those good things. And fighting for our sewers. I talk about our sewer justice and suing the EPA and all of this other stuff. And so he's been engaged in that in a long time. And then we'll get into your story. But yeah, welcome. Thank you for being here. And then if you could just give us like a minute on your dad, your brother, and your whole Rockstar family that you have. And then we'll talk about your story.
I do have an amazing family. My mom is down south right now at Elk Lake. She's a real estate agent. Been working for herself forever, Sam Altman. My brother is a badass, an amazing father. He's doing a lot of work right now with marketing as well. And my father is doing what he does best, which is trying to save the environment. So very proud of my family, and very lucky to be back in Cincinnati to be a part of watching my brother grow his family. It's just an awesome time for that piece only.
Yeah. So I'm keeping an eye on as I look down on my phone here, and I'm kind of keeping an eye on the comments as people join us. Keep an eye on things. We've got a lot of people tuning in, and we'll get to some folks' comments. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments, and we'll get to those. And, so my goal of doing this show, I guess I'm calling it a show now, D Live, was to just kind of have this, just a conversation with some Cincinnati folks, whether it be political figures, people that we know. I'm hoping to have some folks on from the medical field and talk about everything that we're facing right now. And not only just to, get right into the topic, whatever it may be, but have, get to know people and the backstory. I always talk about the backstory. Now, what brought us here and how did you get here? And it's super interesting to me. And I'll relate this again because we have so many new folks that are joining us. Like for instance, watching a movie or a Netflix show, and they do the backstory. After a while, they go back and it kind of is instructive of how we got here. And so what I like to do is just talk about you and how you got here, and then how we met and kind of the history of that, and then kind of move it up to the present day, where we're at, the challenges that we're all facing during these challenging times, and then what the future holds, and just kind of talk about that. But super loose conversation. And like I said, we'll have folks interacting here. I'll actually be able to click on some of the comments and add them. They'll come up on the screen, so we can do that. And hopefully I won't screw anything up because I'm still new at some of the software and whatnot. But yeah, so that's just kind of the format. And other than that, it's just super loose, and we'll go from there. So you told us a little bit about the family, and you've got some People are doing great stuff in the Altman family, and yourself included. How do we get here to have this conversation? Like we met. I think the first time we met is when you started at Bakersfield, right? I'm
Yes.
pretty sure.
Yeah,
Um,
because when did you move to Cincinnati? Remind me.
I'm sorry.
When did you move to Cincinnati?
So I moved to the, because I'm originally from the Cleveland area. So I
Right.
moved in when I started at Mason PD in 2003, January of '03. I moved there, and then after a couple of years, I started hanging out downtown more and kind of networking and stuff like that. And then I actually bought my condo here where I'm at right now in my office in October of 2010. So that was
Okay.
kind of early on when I moved in here. I think the Senate had just opened, and the
Mhm.
Lackman was about to open, and that was like pretty much it. So and then that was about the time I think. Well, I don't want to get ahead of the story, but you went to Portland for a while, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool, and then we managed to bring you back, which was even cooler. So
Right.
tell us about that, like that time period. How did you get into the hospitality industry and all of those types of things?
Okay. So the reason why I asked is because there's a restaurant you don't know of probably, but I talk about often, and it's a restaurant called Jekyll's in Hyde Park. It's no longer there. It's where you can pump your gas nowadays at the Kroger. But it was a pretty big deal back in the day, and the first restaurant I ever went to as a baby, and it was my very first job ever. And I worked there in high school, and I just fell in love with the hospitality industry. And it was
What now?
easy
What
there.
year? We don't want to because we know you're very young.
I'm
Um,
very young, so this
but
was
about what year are we talking?
um,
What year was that?
I graduated from high school in 2000, so this is 96, 90,
Okay.
95. It was a restaurant I felt very comfortable in because I'd been going there my whole life, and I went to Purcell Marion for high school and got a weekend job, and I just fell in love with it, and I became a host. And somehow, quickly, my management team at the time recognized that I was able to read a room really well, and so they kind of left me at that host stand on the weekends, and I tried to walk in heels and do all the silly things you do in high school. And I
Looking
just
like
loved it.
looking like a baby deer in the
Oh my
heels,
God,
like
it was
Bambi.
awful. And I had braces,
Oh,
and
wobbly, wobbly.
it was so bad. But I met a bunch of really amazing people who I, I think most of us in the restaurant industry have our story of our first little restaurant family, and that was mine. I was in love with this place. I have a kind of weird, unfortunate fascination with it. I stole my post share from there. I still have that and stuff like that. So I was in love with it. It was devastating when it closed for many people. There are many fans who still talk about Jekyll's. But because of that, I made a really great friendship with a young lady named Jerry Chula, and we became basically sisters, and we still are. So the reason why I bring that up is because we talk about Jekyll's fondly and often, and she developed a relationship with a young man named Alex Bless, and
Yeah.
we would always talk about this, and he just loved hearing us talk about this family and his whole. He never even went there, and he just could. He like loved hearing his story. So anyway, Jekyll's closed, life went on, believe it or not. And I was stayed in the hospitality industry. I went to school for a little while. That didn't work out for me right away. And I just kept finding myself in sort of leadership roles. Um, Actually, Alex got me a job at a Holiday Inn at one point, and so I worked there, which is really amazing. You learn a lot of weird things when you manage a Holiday Inn. And at that time, I got in a relationship and decided to move out west for a while. So packed my Hyundai Elantra up and drove out west. So that was in
Well,
2008. Go ahead.
yeah. So that I know. I was just gonna say, like, that's super cool because just in this short, couple of minutes that you just gave, like, I didn't realize that you had that prior. I didn't know that Alex went back that far. So, and then we'll talk about that, like how Thunderdome and with Bakersfield and Eagle and some of the other brands that they've created, how that came about. But so that's a name for everybody that knows Alex. I didn't realize it went back that far. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I moved out west, and I moved out west in the worst possible time at the time, which of course now we're gonna challenge it, I guess. But and that was the recession falling out from the bottom. So I moved out. I've never had to find a job. I've never had to look for a job, meaning I've always was always pretty easy. I'm in the hotel and service industry, and absolutely no one is hiring a new person from the Midwest. So it took me about a month and a half out there, and I applied to everything you can imagine.
This
And
is
finally,
this is in Portland, right?
in Portland, yes,
Okay.
Portland, Oregon. And finally, somehow found myself taking a seasonal job at a place called Moonstruck Chocolate. And that literally was it was a $9 an hour job at the time, and it was a seasonal job because the holidays were starting, and I was going to be selling truffles and milkshakes at a romantic little candy shop. And I was like, I don't care, I'll take anything, I'll do anything and whatever, whatever I need to do. So I started working there through the holidays, and this is interesting. I think it's sort of part of my story, but quickly realized that the recession was hitting, and people were scared. And as I stood on the other side of the counter with a bunch of kids much younger than me working at this chocolate place, I recognized that the kids behind the counter were not realizing how important this little trip to a candy store was for people.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw people come in for 15 minutes on their break and just sit there in this really magical little space. And I saw them order a $2 piece of chocolate and kind of take a deep breath. And I think there was I think I really realized then that people go into these spaces and spend their hard earned money to escape from reality for a moment.
Right.
And that's when it all really hit me about how important this job can be, right? And so I went to my manager at the time, who is now a very good friend of mine. And I'm like, and I'm like, who the heck am I, right? They don't know me. We had to retrain these people because the people behind the counter were so mean to these guests and just kind of flip it to them. And they weren't really recognizing that this was like a moment that people walked into the store to breathe. And so as I recognized that and talked to my manager and talked to our district manager, I got promoted pretty quickly and I was so into that brand, and I just thought it was such a beautiful thing, and it was such an important moment for people. And that was like, come this holiday season for that brand, they're used to selling $50 a pop, and now people are spending, $18. So,
Right.
I saw this whole kind of, this thing happen with a really, really important Portland, it's kind of like the graders of Portland, if you will. Go ahead.
Right. No, I was just there's a couple things came to mind just right off the bat. First of all, if you look at, and we'll start talking a little bit more about when you did come back and over the Rhine in that 2010, 2011, 2012 time period, Portland was a little bit of a model in a couple of different ways for some of the things that we were doing, and the kind of the renaissance that occurred out there, they were ahead of the curve with that. And you kind of saw almost that same kind of vibe start to to take shape here. And so that was one thing. And then a couple of the comments that we've gotten have talked about, and just for later on when we get to it, how does that relate? How does that experience coming out of the recession 2008, 9, 10, 11, maybe how does some of that perhaps, shift our thinking for how we come out of the current situation? And what's that going to look like? So when we get to that, when we get up to the current time frame, that's folks are thinking about that, and I think we were as well going into this.
Yeah, it's a hard question. So anyway, I'm there, and I luckily had taken this job, and I was around amazing people. Oh my God, the most amazing friends in the world I developed there. Just like Jekyll's, we started a community, right? We had this community and these people, and we all helped each other. So because of my outgoing vocal part of me, I started speaking to people and talking, and I just was like, this training, we got to talk to people about how important these interactions are, because we can't take these guests for granted right now at all. Right. We shouldn't anyway, of course. At this moment, we're just like, ugh. So I ended up getting promoted and worked in the mall for a while downtown Portland, and then got promoted to exactly what you're saying, which is the Northwest district, which is like everything I hoped OTR was going to be. And I'll explain that in a moment. But so this really amazing little neighborhood, it was Northwest 23rd and Northwest 21st, I think, were kind of like, it looks like if you call it, if you picture Main Street and Vine Street, it's kind of that whole thing. So I got to do that. That was a flagship store, and I got to rewrite the training manual, and got to retrain a lot of people. And it was, I was very passionate about it. It was easy to be passionate about a brand like that. So, so anyway, there I am, and in a relationship that we didn't work out, and I moved out into in that same neighborhood. and got really involved with different events. In fact, that street that I worked on, which was a big deal in Portland, had to close down for to completely redo the roads. And so we threw a party to reopen the street because, you lose all that. So I was just really involved and very, very happy. And lo and behold, I actually looked it up today. I find a message in my Facebook account from Jerry, my friend, and her husband's like, "Hey man, call me." I'm like, okay. So I call and he's like, I think I have an idea and I think you'd be perfect for it. So I'm like, okay. And he's like, and it means you need to come back to Cincinnati. I'm like, nope, sorry. Like, no offense, Cincy, at the time, but I did not have any desire ever to come back other than maybe visit my family. So he called again a couple weeks later and we talked and he's like, just come and visit. He totally knew how to sell this to me too. Just come and visit and see your family. They'll be so happy and then we'll just talk, right? So, okay, so I come back to Cincinnati to surprise my dad. It was in March for his birthday. Actually, I didn't surprise him very well. I had to tell him because I was so excited. And so I go there and I'm going to meet with these guys and I know Alex and I don't know the other ones. And
those other guys. Oh, those other two? Those other two?
The other guys. So I'm like, okay, I'll meet with you guys. So I show up early to a meeting and I went to Coffee Emporium on Central. And I sat down there and I got a table together and I'm just like, okay, I'm not really, there's like no part of me that thinks I'm taking this job. Like I'm just kind of doing this and I can't wait to see Alex and, I'm going to chat, but there's no part of me that thinks this is what I'm going to be doing. So I sit down and I'm like sitting in Coffee Emporium about probably half an hour early and the energy was unbelievable. And I always like assume like you were probably running around like, Chris, all these people that I know now were probably running around in that coffee shop that day, working and doing stuff, but I couldn't believe that was Cincinnati. It felt so different. And I was just like, man, and these people look like fun and hip and they're like riding bikes and like, this is not Cincinnati that I thought. And so I sat there and the guys show up and they tell me, what their vision is. And I just was like, man, this is really interesting.
So that just to interrupt you for a moment. So we're talking, this is probably like that 2010-ish,
yeah,
2010.
2000, yeah.
So, yeah, and
2011, actually.
Okay. And that's when things were starting to crop up. So, for example, for me, I bought my condo here on Vine Street and I could almost, at the time, looking out my office window right here, I'm looking at the Mercer restaurant in the Mercer building, but that wasn't here. And I could see that, not quite the Bakersfield, but, well, first of all, I have to interrupt everybody for just a moment. We have a very important guest that has joined us as she tends to do from time to time. She makes her appearances now. Now look, here's the thing. I know that you like to be the center of attention and the star of the show at all times. This is City Kitty, everybody. Josie, hashtag City Kitty, who actually patrols outside out on the patio to keep an eye on the block out here. So she likes to make an appearance and say hello to all of her fans. So, Josie, say hi to everybody. What do you think about it? Everything good?
They're looking pretty nice.
All right. Yeah, she matches the decor in here. So, that's Josie, hashtag City Kitty, everybody. You'll see her out on my patio. But anyway, so at that time, but people, I had Chris Seelbach on, our mutual friend Chris Seelbach, who's a Cincinnati City Council member who also lives in Over the Rhine. And people tend to forget like what the city was like going back 15 years ago in that kind of 2000, you had the run in the 90s on Main Street and it kind of fizzled out. And then by the mid 2000s, we rolled the sidewalks up at 5 o'clock and everybody went home. And that's just how it was. And, some things started kind of to percolate in the late 2000s and some different plans. And you could kind of start to sense that, that change in energy. And really that was what led me to move down here and ultimately invest down here in 2010 and buy my condo here kind of on the promise of everything and the concept and the idea that, that things are going to improve and get better. It was dangerous at that time. People tend to forget about that. It was one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country.
Mhm.
And so, at that time, a lot of it was just a vision, and there was a lot of work to do. And I think it's easy over time to lose sight of that, that things just didn't happen by accident. A lot of people worked, a lot of people invested and put a lot at risk when it was not guaranteed that things would end up a certain way. And so, I mean, when you think about those times, it was, certain people with a vision and willing to invest and risk. I mean, for my small little thing that I did of buying a condo here, people told me I was crazy. I was out of my mind, dude. You're going to get killed and lose all your
Oh, yeah.
money. And so for the first couple of years in that time frame, you were starting to see that energy in 2011 at Coffee Emporium. But hell, I couldn't get, I would have my bar stocked up here. I told this story with Chris. I would have my bar stocked up here and invite friends to come down and, hey, drinks on me. Hell no, not going down there. And that was the move. And so, we saw these kind of early adopters and things like that, but it wasn't a given at that point that it would end up being a safe or that it wouldn't all crumble and the early investors just lose everything and that's it. And so, I think that's important to keep in mind that that history. It took a lot of work and a lot of risk and those types of things. So anyway, with that, I just wanted to inject in that
No, it's
kind of
true. And
2011 time period.
so, it was during the day, obviously, when I met these guys at the coffee shop. These guys, of course, I mean the boys, Joe, John, and Alex, and they told me their vision. And then I walked down the street and kind of turned that
So
corner.
this was for Bakersfield, right? So they're talking
Yeah.
to you about it was a concept that they had for Bakersfield.
Yeah.
And this is Joe and John Lonnie, right?
Mhm.
And Alex, who were the three partners and Thunderdome and everything that it's grown to be since that time. But there was this concept was it just Bakersfield at that time, or were there?
So Joe and John had Corrido,
Right, Corrido, right?
and then Alex was in the hotel industry.
Okay, but this was the very start of what became, Thunderdome and the various different restaurants and themes and such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just I turned the corner and I saw that Senate was open. Abigail Street was under construction.
Mm-hmm.
Lava-Matic was there.
Yep.
Right.
Lava-Matic. Yep.
I don't know. I don't even know that we walked down the street that far. Maybe Lackman was there at this time or not. But
Lackman had just opened at that point.
Yeah. So we walked into. From what I recall, we walked into the door because if you look at from the outside, look at Bakersfield. It's Bakersfield's door, and next to it is 1215, right? 1215. The coffee shop wasn't there yet. Nor was Bakersfield. And you guys know this better than I do. That was like a T-shirt pop-up or something at the time, right?
So, yeah, for a hot minute, but a lot of stuff was boarded up, and and now just kind of on that theme, like where Pontiac is now, farther down Vine Street, that was still Rose Hardware, which had been there for a million years. And old Mr. Rowe, I think, was just about to retire anyway at that point. He's probably 80 or something. But everything else was boarded up. And I tell the story that I watched somebody get shot off. I was on my patio and a guy got shot right out here on Vine Street. And that's what it was. It wasn't people on the street. It wasn't all this. The stuff was boarded up. You had the dope boys that stood out in front of Kroger for forever. And from time to time a shooting, and that's what we had. We had tumbleweeds and a random bullet, a lot of times, and people forget about that. But yeah, a lot of it was just boarded up buildings and on their way to crumbling into the ground.
Yeah. So we walked in, and at the time it was a dump. So when you walked into the door, you would see that wall that is is Bakersfield's banquette was not there. So it was all open. And it looked, much larger. And anyway, so they kind of told me what their vision was there. And everything they were saying to me and everything I thought about the neighborhood, I was like, I have to be part of this. Like, I don't know how I just have to. I felt it. And, looked back and forth in the neighborhood I was involved in there, and it was already done. I got to be a part of it, and I was involved in a lot of things in Portland, and I had the most amazing people, the best friends in the world out there, who got me through a lot. But there was just something about what they said and something about this street and the idea of being able to bring people into the workforce and teach people skills and have some of the most amazing, it just was like, it all kind of flew into my eyeballs. Like, yeah, I have to do this. So Thankfully, they offered me a job at that point after that. So, they asked me to come and be the GM of Bakersfield. So I, I celebrated my dad's birthday, saw my family, jumped on a plane, went home, broke the news to many, many friends. Luckily, I think I should do this every couple of years. I had like a month-long going away party. It was really fun.
Any excuse will do.
Exactly. And gave my notice to Moonstruck, which was really hard because I loved that concept. I love that brand so much. And I was very proud of them and what I got to do there. And I flew back. I wish I had, I would nowadays, of course, I wish I took a train back or something, especially because we didn't know. We had a lot of time between me coming back and the restaurant opening. So anyway, then we started talking and we got in the space and the neighborhood started turning in this good way, and that little block started kind of becoming a thing, and eventually we opened the doors. So
and what an amazing time that was, because we just connected earlier today to make sure everything was working here on the video and all that. And I had mentioned that at that time as a resident here, I was going around and kind of being the welcome wagon, as new places opened up, and it got to the point ultimately where it was just kind of hard to keep up because there was so much stuff going on. But it was exciting at that time when Bakersfield did open. Like, I loved Bakersfield. Now, I recall today that I was the mayor of Bakersfield on Foursquare for like 2 years, because I was in there all the time and I loved it. And actually, on that note, I'm going to interrupt for just a moment, because in honor of the occasion, honor of Bakersfield, we do have cocktails tonight. So I do have a margarita. Now, this is a frozen. I got my blender out and everything. I know Bakersfield is on the rocks. They're amazing, margaritas. I cannot recreate them, but but at any rate, cheers to you and cheers to Bakersfield, and we'll talk about some of the other folks that work there. So cheers to that.
Oh yeah. Well, of course, we talk about the Bakersfield margarita. You have to talk about Jeff Snyder.
Oh wait, one more thing, especially in honor of Bakersfield. I don't know how this was probably a gift from you or somebody. I do have a Bakersfield shot glass. I don't know how I came to procure this. I know many of the boots. Anybody that's ever been to Bakersfield remembers the boots that you get your mug of beer in. I did not procure any of those, but I do have a shot glass. So there's that.
I can't believe you don't have a boot. I'm disappointed. That was the whole point.
I know. So many of them disappeared. I don't know how many cases you guys bought, probably by the truckload of boots, because those boots were made for walking right on out the door at Bakersfield.
My favorite part is people start shoving their napkin in it, and you're like, oh, I'll take that.
They were too popular.
I know you're drying this out to take this in at home. So we opened Bakersfield, and it just was that. And, again, it was one of my favorite. And I talk about this. Working at Moonstruck was so amazing because we're so proud of it. Working at Jackal's was so amazing, and then that room, that first little room we have in OTR is just a magical little room. So many friendships are made there, and you're just proud. It was just a fun place to walk around.
Well, and one of the cool things, and you got to remember, there's such creativity. Obviously, it's a business. But the creativity that goes into creating these spaces like this, and I actually wanted to bring that up. It's one of the things you mentioned. I wrote it down. You talked about in Portland about community spaces. And that's kind of what that was at that point in time. And, it had its own vibe, which I kind of liked. Obviously, there was food, amazing food, and will be again. But at that time we're walking in there, I had not experienced anything like this. We had, Mexican restaurants, you would go to a normal, a Don Pablo's or whatever, a Mexican restaurant, or something, and then you had a bar. You didn't have this kind of hybrid bar restaurant where, you go in at happy hour and everybody's eating, having drinks, a lot of food, and then late night got a little loose. From what I recall, from what I vaguely recall, at times it would get a little loose late night. Yes. I pretty much remember a couple of New Year's Eves actually that we spent there. And so, it was just its own vibe. I don't even know the creative process of how how somebody creates that, but it was so cool in Bakersfield. What does that even mean? In Bakersfield, California, that vibe. And I think the mayor actually came out here once with the key to the city to Bakersfield, if I remember that right. But can you tell us just like very briefly, like not to give away the trade secrets, but that process, like it's just so creative. It's cool.
I will tell you, watching those guys create a brand is one of the most, it's the most fun you can ever have. Someone like me who's a total restaurant nerd, it's so much fun. So I'm lucky that I get to watch these guys create it and I get to help them carry it out. And so I will tell you that I don't know how to describe it, but it is, Joe, John, and Alex talking and just about developing and coming up with it. And they just are, it's amazing. I don't know how else to explain it, but I get to listen to it and I understand when I get to be a part of it, which, as we've grown, it's gotten big and all these crazy things. But when I get to be a part of it, then I just know what they're want and then I help them carry it out. So I get to, at that point, I get to help create a team, explain to the team what we want to do.
Hmm.
And one of the first people we hired, I was the first person hired Bakersfield, and then I hired Jeff Snyder, which was the best decision I ever made because I knew nothing about making drinks. And somehow I forgot to tell them that when they hired me, I was like, oh, by the way, like, I had no idea.
And Jeff's gonna be one of the straight up coolest dudes.
He's the coolest dude.
You're like the coolest dude you ever met. Like this guy could be like like a rock star.
He is a rock star. I mean,
yeah. Like an actual rock, like that's just his vibe. He's just a cool dude, Jeff Snyder.
I knew I was doing it the right way because like Alex brought me in to help create a culture and help create the family aspect and this whole dynamic. And then I knew the day I think Jeff called me Mama Bear, I was like, okay, I think I've done this right so far. Like they're calling. I didn't make. There's like stories. I've never made anybody call me Mama Bear. They started calling. But we created this little family, and we were all of us were just so like it just wasn't gonna it wasn't gonna fail because we were so into it. So we just loving to go into work and being very proud of the product and very proud of ownership is just one of the best feelings you can possibly have. So I am not a creator. I am not an owner. There's many things, I'm speaking about my experience, and I can't do too much about just the whole company, but like
right.
It's just been such a fun ride.
Yeah, so just kind of moving ahead, and I mean, you mentioned Jeff. I was trying to think earlier today of like all the people and amazing people have gone on to different roles that started there, especially and again, this is like we're talking about your experiences, your opinions, not on behalf of the company or whatever. So that's the disclaimer.
Right.
But I was trying to think, like Cookie, like I haven't seen Cookie in.
I think he's out selling beer. Trevor was one of the first servers.
Oh yeah.
He has a restaurant in Mount Lookout. Obviously, PJ Newman, he opened Boomtown.
PJ, God dang it.
Yeah, I mean, we just had the most amazing team. And we had so much fun.
Yeah,
and that's what you have to do. I mean, when you're going to do something like that, and when you're going to make a room, make a place for people to escape. And still, back then, people were still escaping from whatever their realities were. And I mean that they walked into Baker's. I believe people walked in to kind of high five people. I mean,
right. Like, it was very much a family atmosphere in that way. You walked in, you just felt at home. It's like I didn't even make it to the bar, and my drink was already set out there. That kind of thing, because and it was the same way in the community at that time. Where it wasn't, because there were just so many, there still wasn't like the tourism per se, or, folks from the suburbs were still kind of trepidatious, a big word, trepidatious.
That's a big word, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big word for me. But, a little fearful of coming down here just yet. And so you had this like core group of, of the neighbors at that point in time, and Bakersfield was just a place where you just kind of felt at home, and it was just comfortable. And like, that's just a cool feeling, before like everybody, we jumped the shark a little bit. I think when the salmon shorts hit in 2015, when the salmon short craze hit.
I welcome salmon shorts. I welcome into my restaurant.
You knew at that point we'd gone mainstream at that point, but yeah, but that those early days, that kind of 2011 to 2014 few years, it was just a cool time.
It really was a cool time, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it because I could have easily. I mean, Portland would have been there, and I would have died. I remember talking to my friend Jerry, and she's like, what do I do? Do I do this? Is this the right thing? Moving back across the country, moving back home. And she's like, just picture yourself reading about this place opening and how you're going to feel. And I'm like, you're right. I will be devastated if I'm not involved in it. So, it's such a cool thing to be a part of this neighborhood, from not the beginning, but pretty much the beginning. And now I'm on the OTR chamber, and I get to do lots of fun things because of my role. And I'm so in love, and I cannot believe Cincinnati was awesome. But I actually had friends come from Portland to Cincinnati, believe it or not. I think I had to pay them, but they loved it. They thought Cincinnati was awesome, and it's really turned into quite a city. And I know we're going to be back, as soon as.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, because I do want to spend some time on what not only what transpired then and kind of how things grew and went to the next level, but also where we stand today with the challenges that we're facing and maybe what the future holds. But one of the things that I always appreciated, not only about you personally, but I think kind of the ethos of the company, was that even though it's kind of new on the scene and there's this resurgence and a new vibrancy and a renaissance occurring here, it was a place, especially with the price points of all the Thunderdome restaurants, where you can get a beer for $2, a shot of the day for a couple bucks, tacos for a few dollars, and even the hiring and the staff is very diverse. And I know because, and we'll talk about with the Eagle and how things expanded, but being on the HOA here in my building, which is the Eagle as part of that, and so really kind of being a partner in a way, and seeing that and establishing, out the back door where our garage is to my building of the Eagle, and the staff's out there, and making connections with folks working there. I think that's one of the cool aspects, especially given the history of Over the Rhine and this neighborhood. My sense is, I don't know, but my sense is very purposeful, to make sure that the business is welcoming, and that the staff was also reflective of this community, and being appreciative of the history here of the folks that have been here longer. We're talking about this neighborhood's been here a long time. And so, that's one of the things I've appreciated about Thunderdome and how you all conduct business.
Yeah, I'm really, again, part of my wanting to move back was being sold on the fact that we're going to be part of a neighborhood. And I meant that in every way. I love, like I said, employing people. And I have a guy that has worked for us since the beginning, and I think he was maybe 18 or something like that. And he's worked for us, and he's learned so many skills, and he's awesome. And it's just being able to help people and employ them and teach them skills and teach them how to be good employees. Of course, that's not what I did with everybody. We had a great team all across the board, but I did love that aspect of, I knew that was a big selling point, was bringing people into the workforce and being able to provide a fun and safe environment for people. So that was huge, and that's part of my activism, that I was born with. So
right.
I hope, and I think we've done a great job with that, and we'll continue to do it. So.
No, that's awesome. So then, at a certain point, and I've actually been to Bakersfields in other cities. So things began to grow, and that's kind of when your role then kind of expanded beyond just this Bakersfield, and to other cities, and then also other brands within the company, such as Eagle and so forth. So that's kind of, we're getting into 2014, 2015 at that point where things.
This is where I start completely losing track of time.
Right.
Because we, Indianapolis, Bakersfield, I got to go on the road. Which was one of my favorite things ever, was I got to go, although leaving Cincinnati and my little community here was rough, but I got to go and move into little towns and do hiring and start building little families other places. So we have 8 Bakersfields and then 4 Eagles and 2 Krugers and stuff like that. So I was, from the majority, for about 5 years, I was on the road, hitting different neighborhoods and helping build that.
Well, and I got to tell you, so that was amazing for the growth of the company, but we were all sad here because you were just gone, and it was a big deal when you would show back up, and it's okay, everything stopped. We got to do a shot, Laura's back. So I'd be like, oh my God, here she is. So, yeah, so things got kind of crazy for a while, just like going everywhere. And there's so much involved with that and then doing it remotely and the travel, right?
Yeah, we would go in. I ended up starting. I think it was my first. I would just find it close by. I would get an Airbnb. I'd take my dog, and we would go move into the neighborhood of wherever we were opening. And as we were under construction, I just like go out to the restaurants and have dinner by myself and meet people and end up handing out my card and then starting to hire people. So it's definitely different when you're out of town and when people don't even know what it's like. Cincinnati, like Bakersfield, everyone knew what Bakersfield was, but when you're trying to explain it, I forgot how hard it was to explain what this place is going to be and how it's going to be so amazing and kind of convince people. But we would do little opening teams and opening parties just like we did here, and we kept on going. So that was about I think it was about 4 or 5 years, mostly being on the road in different cities.
Yeah, and this is will kind of I think maybe bring us up into current day a little bit. But I think there's a lot to be said not only for the people and this kind of family atmosphere that you established, but the importance also, and I think we've seen the growth of the restaurant industry, the restaurant bar hospitality industry over the past 10 or 15 years, and you can get into all the stats of that, of how much people eat out these days, and things like that. And we may see a change in that because, now we're being forced to stay home and eat mostly. And so the role, and again, going back to that theme of community and these spaces for people, but the role that there's so much, and we're really seeing it now. And unfortunately, I think, mostly in the Over the Rhine community and within the hospitality industry, you have an appreciation for the people that serve us and that work these, hard shifts, long shifts, working for tips and everything involved with that. But now I think we're really seeing as an industry, how many folks that employed, that the industry employs, and now what the impact. So it's not only about the business and about those individuals, but the role and the importance, and we've seen this growth, in the greater community, and what a role this is, and how valuable it is to our economy, employing so many people, and these businesses that are going into historic buildings that just a few years ago were crumbling to the ground, and the benefits that we're saving these structures. This is the business that's supporting it all. Obviously the greater, taxes and such that go to our economy that we see now. The city's struggling with looking like a $80 to $100 million deficit, and a lot of the reason is all of this has come to a halt. So what do what's your sense of where we're at right now? Obviously, it goes without saying it's challenging times, difficult times, and people are enduring this and trying to get signed on to unemployment if the computer website's up, and then we're trying to do things to help out and find creative ways of doing that. And then the other thing is you see the various. I think there's a camaraderie, and I've never actually worked in the service. I haven't been on that side of the bar so much. I've spent plenty of time on this side of the bar, but there's a. But it's like I have an honorary, I service industry night on Mondays. I think they give me half off just as an honorary thing. But you see a camaraderie, and people come together. Even the different restaurateurs, the different ownership groups, kind of coming together to help everybody. So, what's your sense, or what was were people kind of on edge? And I talked, being here. Talking to the folks at the Eagle when we're still open, but you could kind of see the direction that we're heading and kind of those fears, like, am I going to have a job tomorrow? I don't even know. And we try to do carry out for a hot minute, and that doesn't really, support it. So what was kind of like leading up to where we're at right now, leading up to shutting everything down? What was kind of the mood? What was the vibe? What was the sense? What were the fears that people had?
I mean, it's so interesting. I know everybody in a leadership role is getting these kinds of questions, and in the moment, people were still going out. Before the mandate came down, and I think it's hard to answer. I can't really answer that question for many reasons. One is that we just don't know, and it's so hard because I remember being at the Eagle and reading a tweet or something, and like all of us, like every human in the industry world and every leader in the industry was getting this information at the same time as our employees were and our guests were.
Right.
So everyone's like, okay, now what? And we're just like, like, this is what we have to think. So what I feel personally is I know that this city has the most unbelievable entrepreneurs when it comes to the hospitality industry.
There's no question. I'm telling you, we are outside of maybe Portland and a couple of the areas, and all the shows have come here, right? Food Network. Yeah. I've been to not just Bakersfield, but a number of the Taste of Belgium. You've got 4E Bob Deck and all the people at 4EG with their bar concepts, bar and food as well. Dan Wright, with the Senate and all his different things that he's doing, and we become renowned for that. It's a huge part of of the city of Cincinnati now. We're known for it, and we started having like tourists coming here specifically because I saw this Food Network show of these restaurants.
It's unbelievable. The last weekend we were open, someone was in there because they were in because of divers, whatever, triple D.
Triple D, yeah.
But no, and here's what I'll tell you. I'll tell you that I know all of us, meaning the industry is going to do, we're all going to think outside the box. We're all going to do what we believe is safe and right at the time. And we're all talking to each other. This is not we're in divide. I talk, and just my limit, I'm not involved in an ownership level at all. So when it comes to all the crazy stuff they have to go through, I'm not involved in that. But just reaching out to other entrepreneurs and just checking in on each other. I know that the boys are doing it. I'm doing it. We all are just such a community that I just feel no way, shape, or form is it going to be easy. But I know it's going to be. The people, when they have this, they're going to want to come back in a way, and we're going to be there for it. So
right.
It's such a hard answer. I can't answer the question, but I do know that everyone's game planning and talking and thinking through, and they're all helping each other out, which is my favorite piece to this, because I don't know that every city has that.
Right.
I just am so impressed by all the entrepreneurs and all the leaders and the even just there's secret Facebook pages you guys don't know about that don't work in the industry. We're all helping each other through unemployment. We're all giving each other information. We're all checking in on each other. Obviously Jose Salazar is amazing. And we're all trying to do what we can to help support those people. And I think everyone's kind of itching to get back, but we know that we have to do it the right way so that we're keeping people safe.
Right. And so just talking like this greater concept of the industry, I know, from a neighborhood, from a community perspective as a resident, there was a notion that we were going to have, the bars and restaurants. We were also going to have, kind of community neighborhood businesses. So for a minute, and then there's been different concepts obviously Holtman's has been very successful. And some other things have come and gone. We had a dry cleaners for a minute down here. But it seemed to be, and I think there was a notion out there, and maybe you can share something on this, that we got a little oversaturated just anyway. It got to the point for me where I couldn't keep up. There was a new spot opening every other week. The branding got a little bit kind of similar. It just seemed like. And so I think there were some valid questions over the last maybe 18, to 24 months of, is this sustainable in the terms of it's bar, restaurant, bar, restaurant, bar, restaurant, bar, restaurant. Is there enough, folks living here to support that? And Friday and Saturdays maybe are good, but on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday happy hour, all of a sudden, because when it was Bakersfield, Senate, the Lackman, and one or two others, you couldn't get it was 4-hour waits, right? And then it just got to the point where it seemed like there was so I don't know in the industry as a whole if it got oversaturated. What was your sense of that?
Oh, don't make me talk to that. So
okay, you don't have to. I'm definitely putting you on the spot.
article was written about 2 years ago talking about the restaurant bubble, and of course everyone's paying attention to it. I definitely wish, I know everybody who did open their business in this neighborhood wanted to be here, and I know that they all put their blood, sweat, and tears in it. So I don't even want to think about that. But as being on the OTR chamber, we did really talk about that and making sure we were bringing in different kinds of businesses. But it is, it's a huge effort opening a business, and I understand what you're saying, and I don't really want to go too much because I care about everybody who did open, who
right.
been working and spending their time in this neighborhood. So.
And that's fair enough. Having said that, I think there are valid questions now, just because of the difficulties that these businesses have had accessing, the loans. There was an article out today that the whatever the funding was that's come out of the stimulus is already gone for all small businesses, including hospitality industry. Will Congress give them some more? So we don't know who's going to be able to weather this storm, and what's going to happen to many of our service industry employees. I think it's a challenge. So maybe if we were on the day everything's shut down on the 14th, 15th, whenever that was of March, if that's the baseline of 100, maybe 70% come back or some number, but probably the reality is that not everybody's going to be able to survive this, unfortunately. And then I think it calls the question that kind of the next thing, which some of the commenters have mentioned here. What's it going to look like when we come back? Are people going to say, what? I was spending way too much money going out all the time. I've seen how much I actually kind of enjoyed being home with my family a little bit and reestablishing those connections in the home and cooking at home and those kinds of things. Are there going to be a certain percentage, and not everybody, because especially at first, I think there's going to be a pent-up demand where everybody can't wait to get the hell out, and our weather is, going to start improving and things. But, is there going to be, if the business was 100%, are there going to be some folks that say, I'm just not comfortable being in a crowded space, crowding into a bar. We're going to be wearing face masks maybe for a while, for a long time. I wonder if you've got any thoughts about, when we do open back up at some point, what's that going to look like? Are we going to have to change the layout of things to, account for more spacing and different things? So do you have any thoughts on that of kind of where we go from here when we do open back up?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I actually kind of want to flip it a little bit around to someone like you who went on a regular basis. It's like, how do you feel? What are you going to feel like? I know there's going to be a percentage of people that are not going to come out at all. There's going to be like that, and there's going to be a percentage of people that do come out and who are really uneasy and kind of watching everything.
Right.
And some people who just are like, thank God, right? Thank goodness.
Right.
So as a person that reads a room, I'm going to have to be very aware of that, and I'm going to want to be in a building like, right, the Bakersfield because of the size of it, and just really pay attention. I think we're going to have to kind of make those decisions up on the fly. And just like how we didn't make our decisions up on the fly, but just how we've done things, meaning the industry has kind of created their brand, we're going to have to change some things. And we're going to have to talk to each other and say, hey, last week I did this and here's how I handled it. And I think we're going to get really, really creative.
Right.
And I think that a lot of us are going to come back and give our guests and our clientele a place to escape, But we're going to be watching the people in the room, and they're going to be watching us, which is really important, right? Like they're going to be watching everything we do. And I think one thing I'm just in my own, kind of thinking through and talking about with my friends who own businesses, and obviously my ownership. So.
Yeah. I would say just from a customer perspective, at least just for me personally, my sense is, I've noticed, because I've been doing, people that are like, dude, I didn't know you could cook. You're doing your cooking stuff and posting pictures. And it's like, I didn't really know I could. I was kind of making it up. But I mean, for people that do eat out a lot or go out and you have a couple drinks, or if you buy a round of shots for your friend, if you're at Bakersfield, maybe it's super inexpensive, but some other places are higher price points. But even so, it's easy to go out around here on a Tuesday, Wednesday night and you know what the average checks are, but it's not that hard to go out and spend $50 or $75 between dinner or drinks, or if you buy a round of shots for your friends, you have $100 tab on like a Tuesday. And
Right.
so, I can definitely say, and, we'll see as time goes on, it's like you look at your credit card statement, and by this time I would have had, bang, but a bang, 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 20, 30, and it doesn't seem like, the 20, but $30. And then by the end of the week, or even people, getting their Starbucks for $4 or $5 a day at work every day and eating out for lunch. And all of a sudden now you realize, since you've been working from home for 2 or 3 weeks, my God, I just saved $500 and I didn't. But that's literally the 500. That's we're watching our economy contract, and that's the $500 that's not being spent out. That's not tipping people, etc. And so, I don't know. A lot of times I think we think there's going to be these huge changes, and then you look back and you say, well, it was a blip in the radar. So I don't know. Maybe it does bounce back, but I kind of sense like a little bit of a contraction. And talking about, I had my dad on here. The first thing, and my dad was born in 1939. He was my first guinea pig on doing these things. And I was asking him a little bit about like that mindset of coming out of the Great Depression, where I remember my grandma canning jars stacked up, because you got to be ready. You never know when's going to happen. Well, guess what? I mean, I kind of wish I had 100 jars of peaches in the, and so, yeah, so I don't know. I kind of sense that there will be a little bit of a contraction. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be a change, and we just need, and it's going to be hard. It is heartbreaking. It's definitely one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, when it just comes to being with people I adore, being around all the time, and we're as cliche as we're all in this together. This is not just one person, so I think we're going to all come out of it together, and we're going to help each other through it. That's the only thing that's what I'm like clinging to, is just how much goodness I've seen through all this. And it's terrifying, but let's stay looking and game planning and rethinking business and ebbing and doing what we have to do. But it's going to be interesting for sure.
Right. Well, we did get the word today from the governor that we're going to start probably on a limited basis, and we'll see. Maybe everybody they hear that and they say, "Oh, okay, it's a free for all now," and we just go back. But May 1st, they were going to start opening things up. So I don't know what all of the details of that will be when we can open up the bars and restaurants again. I'm thinking I'm hoping that some of these changes that we've seen that are maybe positive. So for example, all of a sudden they made the rule you can have 2 drinks, carry out liquor.
Right.
Maybe we can do more open some of these arcane alcohol laws, that are the vestiges of prohibition. Why can't you have that? Or Jacob Trevino's doing a little pop-up carry out, not margaritas, but frozen drinks, daiquiri bar, things like you see in, like in New Orleans, you go in and they've got all the machines and and you get a plate and you can take it to go. Who cares? Who cares? And so if it's okay, and I use the same thing for office folks that are working from home now, it's like, oh, for the last 10 years they told me I can't work from home, but I've just worked from home for the last whatever, and it's been fine. So why can't we keep doing that? So hopefully some of these changes that come out of it, because we've been forced to, and people say, you know what, it wasn't the end of the world. So maybe we can do some things, and I think there's a strong argument to be made that we need to do these things to help these businesses, and to be less restrictive on some of these rules. So, hopefully some of this type of thing can take root.
Creativity at its finest, I think, for sure.
Yeah. So with that, we're kind of, these, I don't time this, obviously it's free. So I think everybody got their money's worth from this thing. It's free. Listening to us up here, just kind of rapping. This is like how we would be if we were just sitting at the bar talking. That's kind of how it would be. It tends to take about an hour, just naturally over the course of things. So we're starting to wrap up, but I just wanted to thank everybody. We've still got 20 people on here, and so that's super cool. Lots of comments, lots of love for Lauren Altman. I found that out for sure, and. I knew you were popular, but this blew my mind. Yeah. So I don't know. When I get my blood pressure starts going up, when I start getting into it, I can see my cheeks getting red. It's not. I swear it's not the tequila. It happens on every one of these.
I used to wear all burgundy, and then I had burgundy hair, and when I would get embarrassed, I would just disappear.
But look at me now. You got me loud. Here I go. But anyway, Esther is here. Esther just showed up. I'll put her comment on here. She says
Esther, I did poach her from a restaurant. I took her from I'm not going to say which restaurant, but she was one of my third hires.
That was the good old days right there with Esther. That's awesome. Allison checking in. What's up? Yeah, so you got all your fans have shown up here, and a lot of people moved across the country or had kids, gone into different industries, or doing different things. But you always have that kind of sense of camaraderie and that sense of family, which was super cool. And no matter what happens, you can't take that away from you.
Yeah, I'm very, very fortunate to have been on this ride for 8 years.
So. Indeed. Well, here's what we're going to do, and I think you left it with a great point, and that is we're all going to adjust. And we can't say that there won't be any fallout or some negative outcomes. Clearly, there will be. We don't want to sugarcoat it. But I think in Cincinnati and this neighborhood in particular, I think we're going to bounce back very strongly. And quite frankly, it's almost going to be like maybe a little hit the reset button, where things were getting a little bit crazy or whatever. We just kind of retrench, refocus, look at this as an opportunity to kind of start fresh, and go from there. And so with that, I will say I'll be looking forward to getting a real margarita, not my half-assed version that I made, and joining you at the bar. Maybe we need a reunion party. Maybe we could do that.
We've been talking about this one for quite some time, and I think that is now going to have to happen.
Oh, that wasn't I thought it was my original idea.
That was my idea.
We did not talk about this. I just thought of it.
So we've been talking about bringing the band back together, the OG band back together. Jeff Snyder behind the bar, Kimberly.
Oh my God, I would love that. I will love it. That's okay. That's it. That's settled. If Alex, Joe, and John are watching this right now, it's settled. We've already decided. That's what we need to do. We've had some blowout, Buck Bakersfield parties in the parking lot over there. Maybe we'll shut the whole damn street down. I'm gonna make a couple calls on that. So I've been trying to do that anyway.
Party, man. Oh my God.
Look at this creativity is happening right now. We just need a whole block party. We shut the street down.
We need to do a street party and bring everybody back, and that way there's room to roam. And I get it. I think you're right.
That's all right. That's it. It's game over. It's done. All right. Now, can you make it happen? I just like to show up and drink. Please just make it happen and let me know when it is. I'll be there.
Thanks, man.
All right. Well, that's awesome. We've left this. We've all got our marching orders now. So get prepared, everybody, all the alumni and everybody else. You're all invited to the party as soon as we have it. I'm going to let Lauren figure it out.
I'm in charge.
Well, Mama Bear, we know you're in charge. So
I'm not here yet, but I'll go look on. Thanks, guys. Anybody who joined us. I love my family, my friends, and everybody. So.
Oh, that's all. I'm getting a little misty over here.
I do too.
All right. Well, thank you, Lauren. Thank you for joining me on another segment of D Live here. Hope folks continue to join in. We're going to have people from across the city and going forward, especially during these challenging times that we face. And as we come out of it, I know we're going to be all stronger together. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody that commented and tuned in. And we will see you all later. Cincinnati, as always, love you. Peace.
Bye. Thanks.